There is a woman named Claire who earns $119,000 a year. She has a master's degree, a job she's good at, and a life that looks from the outside like it's going well. Nice apartment in a walkable neighborhood. A car that's reliable and reasonably new. She eats well, travels a couple of times a year, and has a gym membership she actually uses. She's not reckless with money. She's not gambling. She does not have a shopping addiction or a secret debt she's hiding from anyone. She's not buying designer clothes or financing furniture on credit. And yet, every month, when she opens her bank account around the 23rd or 24th, there is almost nothing left. She earns nearly $10,000 a month after tax. And she cannot tell you where it goes. She has tried. She downloaded the budgeting apps, she tracked her spending for a couple of months, and was genuinely surprised by what she found. Not because any single category was outrageous, but because every category had somehow drifted upward. Her grocery bill for one person is over $700 a month. Her subscriptions, when she listed them all, came to $312. Her car, which felt like a sensible decision at the time, cost her $640 a month between the payment and insurance. And her apartment, in a city where rents have climbed steadily for 5 years, takes up $2,900 of every paycheck before she buys a single thing. Do the math. That is already around $5,600 in fixed and semi-fixed costs. Before food that isn't groceries, before clothes, before anything that feels like living. Claire is not broke by any technical definition, but she has almost no financial margin. She cannot leave a job she's growing tired of because she has less than 2 months of expenses saved. She cannot invest meaningfully because there is nothing left to invest. And she cannot explain how she arrived here because at every step, the decisions that built this life felt reasonable. This is the high earner trap. And in 2026, it is catching more people than ever before. This is not a story about income. You already know that income matters. The question is why income above a certain threshold stops converting into financial stability the way most people expect it to. Why someone earning $120,000 often has less financial margin than someone earning $68,000 a year following a different set of habits. Why a pay raise, which should feel like freedom, can quietly become a new ceiling. The answer is not laziness or irresponsibility. The answer is a set of financial forces that scale with income. Forces that hit hardest at exactly the salary range where people assume they've made it. And the minimalist money principles that consistently protect people from this trap are not about deprivation. They are about understanding what actually drains financial margin and building the habits that stop it. Today, I'm going to walk you through 5 specific forces that drive the high earner trap, show you the exact math behind each one, and give you a reset framework that works regardless of where you are right now. Force 1. The lifestyle upgrade reflex. When income goes up, lifestyle tends to follow. Not because people are foolish, but because every new income level comes with a new set of socially normalized reference points, and because the brain genuinely rewards spending as a form of celebrating progress. Psychologists call this hedonic adaptation. The idea is simple. Improvements in circumstances feel good temporarily and then become the new baseline. The first month in a nicer apartment feels luxurious. By month 4, it just feels like home. And by month 8, the old apartment feels unthinkable. The problem is that lifestyle upgrades rarely travel alone. A rent increase brings a neighborhood with more expensive coffee shops and restaurants. A nicer car brings higher insurance premiums and the social expectation of keeping it maintained. A better apartment brings better furniture because the old furniture looks out of place. Each upgrade seeds 3 or 4 secondary upgrades that arrive quietly over the following months. A 2024 study from Empower found that among Americans earning between $75,000 and $150,000 annually, 61% describe their financial situation as either just getting by or struggling. Not in poverty, not in crisis, but not building anything either. Here is what lifestyle creep actually costs when you run the numbers. Imagine someone who earns $70,000 a year and saves $900 a month. They get a raise to $100,000 a year, a $30,000 increase. If they keep their saving behavior constant and direct the additional income towards savings and investment, that raise is genuinely transformative. Over 10 years, at a 7% average annual return, the additional savings compound to roughly $360,000 in additional net worth. Now, imagine the more common pattern. They move to a better apartment, $600 more per month, upgrade the car, $300 more per month, start eating out more. Because the social circle at the new income level tends to, and the new neighborhood makes it easy. Add another $300 per month there. That's $1,200 a month in new fixed and semi-fixed costs. The raise is now delivering about $300 per month in additional actual savings. The $30,000 raise produced less than $4,000 per year in new wealth. The math strongly favors the first approach. So does the peace of mind. The minimalist money principle that protects against this force is simple. Treat raises as invisible for at least 6 months. Do not change a single recurring expense until you have directed at least 60% of the additional take-home income into savings or investments automatically. Automation is the key word. If the money moves before you see it, the upgrade reflex never gets a target. Force 2. The fixed cost ratchet. There is a specific quality that makes lifestyle creep more dangerous at higher incomes than most people realize. Most lifestyle upgrades create fixed monthly obligations, not variable spending. And fixed costs have a property that spending friction research calls asymmetric stickiness. They go up easily and come down extremely hard. Think about what constitutes a fixed cost in a modern life. Rent or mortgage, car payment, car insurance, phone plan, internet, health-related memberships, streaming and software subscriptions, possibly loan payments. These are commitments that recur every month regardless of what happens to your life circumstances. You can decide tomorrow to stop eating at nice restaurants. You cannot decide tomorrow to stop paying your rent without real consequences. A Federal Reserve report from 2025 found that among households earning between $100,000 and $150,000, average fixed monthly obligations consumed 67% of take-home income. That means the average person in that income range is making discretionary decisions about only about 33% of what they earn. And 33% of $10,000 is $3,300, from which they are trying to cover groceries, clothing, travel, gifts, car maintenance, medical expenses, and anything resembling savings. Let me show you how the ratchet works across a single career. Someone takes their first professional job at $55,000 a year. Their fixed costs are modest. Maybe they spend 40% of take-home on fixed obligations. They have real breathing room. 3 years later, a raise to $75,000. They move to a nicer place. Car payment starts. Fixed cost ratio climbs to 52% of take-home. Still manageable. Another 3 years. A move to $95,000. They upgrade the apartment again to match where their social circle has drifted. A second subscription bundle, fixed costs now at 60%. Raise to $120,000. They buy a home, because that's what people at this income level are expected to do, and the mortgage payment plus property tax and insurance is actually more than the old rent. Another car upgrade because the old one is starting to feel unreliable, and the new salary justifies it. Fixed costs land at 68% of take-home. At every step, the income went up. At every step, fixed costs ate the increase. And critically, every single one of those fixed costs is now very difficult to reduce. Downsizing a home is logistically and emotionally expensive. Breaking a car lease has penalties. Canceling subscriptions requires deliberate effort, and they often auto-renew before you remember to. The minimalist money principle here is to treat your fixed cost ratio as the most important number in your financial life. More important than your savings rate, because your fixed cost ratio determines your savings rate ceiling. Every time you're considering an upgrade that creates a new monthly obligation, the question is not whether you can afford the monthly payment. The question is what this does to your fixed cost ratio and whether you are willing to lock in that trade permanently. A useful target, Keep fixed monthly obligations below 50% of after-tax income at every income level. Below 45% if you want genuine financial margin. The people who always seem to have money are not earning more than their peers. They are protecting their fixed cost ratio, while their peers let it drift upward with every raise. Force 3. The convenience tax. There is a spending pattern almost unique to higher earners that rarely gets named directly. Call it the convenience tax. The idea is that above a certain income threshold, time starts to feel more valuable than money, and people begin spending to eliminate friction and effort from their lives. Meal delivery instead of cooking. Cleaners instead of cleaning. Concierge services, task apps, same-day shipping, premium tiers that remove ads or waiting. Every one of these purchases is individually reasonable. Together, they create what minimalist money researchers call a spending floor. A spending floor is the minimum monthly outflow you can achieve even if you try to cut back. Because so many small convenience expenses are now baked into daily life, even a month of deliberate frugality costs more than it used to. The numbers on this are striking. A 2025 NerdWallet analysis found that households earning over $100,000 per year spend an average of $480 per month on what they classified as convenience services, a category that includes food delivery, same-day delivery premiums, subscription boxes, task-based apps, and services that replace activities people previously did themselves. That is nearly $6,000 per year. Invested over 20 years at 7% annual growth, that is roughly $246,000. I want to be clear, this is not a judgment on convenience spending. Time is genuinely valuable. The question is whether these purchases are intentional or whether they accumulated gradually until they feel invisible. Most people who spend $500 a month on convenience do not think of themselves as spending $500 a month on convenience. They think of each individual purchase as a small, reasonable decision. The spending floor builds itself while you are looking at other things. There is also a compound version of this problem that hits high earners specifically. Because their hourly value of time is genuinely higher, the mental justification for every convenience purchase is stronger. A person earning $25 an hour thinks twice before paying $30 for food delivery. A person earning $60 an hour finds the math easy to rationalize, but the $30 still leaves the account either way. And the rationalization that made the purchase feel justified does not change what the account balance looks like at the end of the month. This is one of the more insidious hidden costs of higher income. The logic that makes convenience spending feel efficient is the same logic that quietly dismantles your financial margin, one easy purchase at a time. The minimalist money approach to the convenience tax is not elimination. It is audit and selection. Once per quarter, list every recurring convenience expense. For each one, apply a single test. If this disappeared tomorrow, would I actually notice the difference in my quality of life? Not in theory. In practice, in your real daily experience. Research from behavioral economist Richard Thaler at the University of Chicago found that people overestimate how much they would miss recurring purchases by a significant margin. The anticipation of loss feels larger than the actual experience of going without. So the audit test is valuable precisely because it bypasses the anticipatory anxiety and asks about real quality of life impact. Keep the ones that genuinely matter. Cut the ones you rated honestly and found you probably would not miss. And resist adding new convenience expenses casually, because each one contributes to a spending floor that only moves in one direction. A reasonable target for someone running a minimalist budgeting approach is to cap convenience services at 2% of monthly take-home income. On a $10,000 monthly take-home, that is $200. Enough to cover the services that genuinely matter. Not so much that you have built a spending floor you can never see the bottom of. Force 4. The social circle premium. Research on spending behavior consistently finds that your spending closely mirrors the average spending of the people you spend the most time with. Not because you are consciously trying to match them, because social reference points shift spending norms without anyone acknowledging that it is happening. At higher income levels, this dynamic becomes a specific financial hazard. The social circle tends to upgrade alongside income, which means the casual dinner out now happens at a restaurant where the check is $120, not $40. The group trip suggestion is now a rental house in a desirable destination, not a budget road trip. The birthday gift expectation has inflated along with everyone's sense of what is normal at this income level. A 2025 University of California study on social spending contagion found that people underestimate the influence of peer spending norms by an average of 63%. Most people believe their spending decisions are primarily individual. The data suggests that social environment explains a larger share of spending variation than income itself. This is not a reason to isolate yourself or to engineer your social life around financial optimization, but it is a reason to recognize that your social environment is a financial variable, and one you have more agency over than most people assume. The practical implication from minimalist money research is this: you do not have to stop participating in a social circle whose spending exceeds yours, but you need to build what researchers call spending friction into those social dynamics. Spending friction means adding deliberate decision points that slow down socially driven spending before it becomes automatic. Concrete examples. Before agreeing to a group expense, apply a simple 24-hour rule. Not to be obstructive, but to convert an automatic yes into a considered one. Most socially driven spending decisions feel urgent in the moment and completely unimportant a day later. The 24-hour rule is not about saying no more often. It is about saying yes with intention, rather than social reflex. Similarly, it is worth cultivating at least a few relationships where the shared activity does not require significant spending. Not because you need to replace your social life, but because having regular touchpoints with people whose spending norms are different recalibrates your sense of what is normal. This has a measurable effect on baseline spending over time. Force 5. The identity purchase loop. At higher incomes, something shifts in how people relate to their purchases. Spending is no longer purely functional. It becomes part of how a person signals their place in the world, to others, but also to themselves. This is the identity purchase loop, and it is one of the most powerful and least discussed forces in the high earner trap. The logic runs like this: you worked hard for this income level. You made sacrifices and put in the hours. It feels right, even earned, to have possessions that reflect that achievement. The car, the apartment, the wardrobe, the travel, all of it begins to carry a story about who you are and what you have accomplished. Scaling back stops feeling like a financial decision. It starts feeling like a demotion. This is exactly the dynamic that behavioral economists call loss aversion applied to identity. Once a possession becomes part of your self-concept, giving it up or declining to upgrade, it activates a psychological threat response. You are not just choosing a cheaper car. You are, on some level, choosing a lesser version of yourself. Research from Harvard Business School published in 2023 found that among high earners who described themselves as financially stuck, the most common shared characteristic was what researchers called identity-linked spending, where a significant portion of their consumption was tied to maintaining a self-image rather than producing genuine satisfaction or utility. The numbers inside that research are worth sitting with. High earners whose spending they classified as identity-linked carried, on average, 42% less invested wealth than high earners at the same income level whose spending was primarily utility-driven. Same salaries. Dramatically different outcomes. The difference was not investment knowledge or access to financial tools. It was the degree to which their purchases were about who they needed to appear to be. And the mechanism that keeps this loop running is the stop upgrading problem. Once you upgrade to a level, upgrading back down requires acknowledging that the upgrade was about image, not function. Almost no one is willing to make that acknowledgement publicly, so the expense stays, and the next upgrade arrives, and the identity the possessions are maintaining becomes increasingly expensive to sustain. The hidden costs of stuff are not just maintenance fees and storage costs, though those are real. The deepest hidden cost is the way identity-linked possessions lock you into a lifestyle you have to maintain. You cannot downgrade without experiencing it as a personal failure, which means the spending is no longer a choice, it is a requirement. The minimalist money concept that addresses this directly is called wealth optionality. The idea is that real financial power is not the ability to spend more. It is the ability to choose differently at any moment. To take a pay cut for meaningful work. To pause your career to care for someone you love. To say no to a promotion that would cost you your health. To leave. To stay. To redirect. Wealth optionality requires financial margin. Financial margin requires reducing fixed expenses and decoupling your identity from your consumption. That is a harder project than tracking your subscriptions, but it is the real work. Ask yourself one question honestly. If you stripped back your lifestyle to 60% of its current cost tomorrow, and you knew no one would judge you for it, would you actually be unhappy? Or would the primary loss be a story you have been telling about yourself? Think about that for a moment, because the answer to that question tells you more about your finances than any spreadsheet. Here is what the minimalist money reset looks like in practice. And I want to be specific, because a framework you cannot execute today is just information. This week, list every fixed monthly obligation you have, every single one. Rent or mortgage, car, insurance, subscriptions, loan payments, memberships, everything that recurs without you actively choosing it each month. Add them up. Divide by your monthly take-home income. That is your fixed cost ratio. If it is above 50%, you have identified the core problem, not your spending habits in general, this number specifically. Write that ratio down, then ask, which of these fixed costs were decisions I made actively versus costs that crept in because my income made them feel affordable? The distinction matters because it tells you where agency still exists. You may not be able to break a lease tomorrow, but you can make a deliberate decision about what happens at the next renewal. Next week, run a convenience audit. List every service or subscription that exists to reduce effort or friction in your life. For each one, ask the quality of life test honestly. If it disappeared tomorrow, would your life actually be worse? Or would you simply adjust within a few days? Cut the ones that fail the test. Set a calendar reminder to run this audit again in 90 days. Spending floors rebuild themselves quietly. The audit has to be cyclical, not one time. This month, apply the 24-hour rule to every non-essential purchase above $50. Not as punishment, as a filter that separates genuine desire from spending reflex. The purchases that survive 24 hours of waiting are usually worth it. The ones that evaporate were driven by something other than genuine need. Track how many evaporate. Most people are surprised by the ratio. Over the next 6 months, if you receive any income increase, direct a minimum of 60% of the additional after-tax income to automatic savings or investments before you change a single expense. Let the raise compound before you let it migrate into lifestyle. The goal is to build financial margin back into your life, not permanently, not as sacrifice, but as the foundation that makes actual choice possible. The budgeting mindset shift that underlies all of this is simple. The question is never whether you can afford the monthly payment. The question is whether this purchase increases or decreases your ability to choose freely. Intentional living is not about having less. It is about spending friction as a feature rather than a bug. It is about building a life you can actually sustain and leave when you want to, instead of a life that requires your maximum income just to stand still. Reduce fixed expenses methodically, not in a panic. As a deliberate project of rebuilding the financial margin your raises were supposed to deliver, but never did. That margin is the thing. Once you have it, you will understand why the people who always seem to have money are not earning more than everyone else. They just never let the trap close around them in the first place. Picture Claire again, the woman from the beginning. $119,000 a year, nearly nothing left at the end of every month. No clear explanation for why. Now, picture her 1 year from now, having run the minimalist reset. Not because she slashed her lifestyle to nothing, but because she identified that her fixed cost ratio was sitting at 71%. That she had $420 per month in convenience services she had genuinely stopped noticing. That her car, which she chose partly because it felt appropriate for her income level, was costing her more per month than she was investing. That 3 of her subscriptions had been renewing for over 14 months without her using them once. She did not have to move or change her social life or give up things she loved. She reduced fixed expenses in 2 categories, replaced one identity-linked purchase with a decision that actually matched her values, and automated $500 per month into investments before she could see it. Within a year, she has 7 months of expenses saved. She is investing consistently for the first time in her career. And for the first time in a long time, when something goes wrong or when something better comes along, she has options. That is what financial margin actually is. Not a number in a spreadsheet, the quiet confidence of knowing you can choose. The trap was never about how much she earned. It was about what came in alongside the earning without her seeing it clearly. And what you can see, you can change.